Welcome, Studs and Scrubs, to another episode of the Studs and Scrubs podcast, brought to you by the Scrubs, as always. With me is my co-host, Nick Strom.
Hey,
how you
what
doing,
up,
Nick?
Stu? I'm doing good. How are things your way?
Same here. Not too much exciting new for this week. We recorded recently, if anyone's been catching up and following along. We're trying to kind of get our schedule down a little better. So I think moving forward, we're most likely going to record Friday nights and drop episodes on Monday. Since we like to talk fantasy, it kind of makes sense. Okay, hey, it's Monday morning. Here's a couple suggestions of some people that are playing bad, some people that are playing good. So not too much to catch up on. Nick and I just talked a couple days ago. So everything's good with me. Nothing big to report. You got anything interesting over there going on?
And being involved in band and sports and all of that stuff. So, yeah, we're still trying to figure out our schedule exactly and just trying to make these recordings work with our schedule for right now. And yeah, hopefully we get into a rhythm here and we can kind of beat off of that.
And right, just make them work.
Well, that's true.
Period.
I had some issues last time
with
that held us up a little bit, so I think we got that taken care of.
Yep. And we had when we first began did our predictions, we had actually recorded 2 or 3 episodes on a different like app that you use to record podcasts, and so we had to kind of change gears and try out a few different ones and see which ones we liked. So there's been a lot of trial and error. We're obviously not, media NHL expert guys. We're just, hockey fans. So it's been kind of fun though learning it. It could be frustrating at times, but it's
been fun. If for nothing else, getting to talk with you a couple times a week and just feel like we're hanging out. Feels like COVID all over again. Zoom calling.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, we're remote now, and that's what people might not even realize if they're listening at all, or people are going to start getting some followers and things. Is like, this is just for fun. Yeah. This is just for us. If we don't have a bunch of followers, we don't really care as much. I mean, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
To get a bunch of advertisement money and not have to go to work. Sweet, sign me up. But like, this is just like we used to live down the street, and now you and my brother, who's still not on yet, live an hour or so apart, and then I'm down in Florida, so it's like we can catch up and talk hockey now in a fun format. So speaking of, we got some cool things that happened this week we wanted to touch on. Right now I'm looking at the live scores for today. It's actually Saturday we're recording. I don't think every team in the NHL played, but a lot of teams played. And we always start with our Red Wings when we remember a big win today. I will call it a big win. You could argue it's not because the Predators are horrible.
Think their record reflects how good of a team they are.
I would agree with that. They got a lot of on paper they're awesome, but they're not playing well. Even Saros isn't playing very well. It's like they're just I don't know.
You got some new players. You got to find that chemistry.
Think that at the end of the year they'll be okay, but there's some of that. And you forget that it's like, you saw it with the Penguins last year where, like, you get such a top-heavy team sometimes, people freak out, And it's like, I who am I to shoot the puck? I got Stamkos on the ice. I better pass it to Stamkos. And, it plays even when you're a superstar. Maybe it even makes it worse. You're all so good that I don't know if that's true, but I did see the highlight where Stamkos got his goal. That was his typical Ovechkin Stamkos. It was kind of down lower. But he's down there in the low circle getting that one-timer. But then there was another one, like identical, that Lyon made an amazing save on. So I was like, that is kind of crazy. There's like 2 plays almost frame for frame the same. And instead of Stamkos having 2 goals, he's got 1 goal and Lyon has a highlight reel save.
Like crazy.
Crazy. I did watch the Knights-Panthers game today.
Okay.
Did you see any of that one? I didn't see actually all of it because speaking of you're busy with kids, I got a 9-month-old who's sick and she's basically fine, but it's the first time she's ever had a cold. So they need a lot of attention, of course, but she was watching the game with me. She was loving it because hockey's kind of loud and bright, and then would get fussy because either she wanted to run around and play or her nose was runny. But anyways, That's not the point. The point is it was a crazy game. They're both so good. And Panthers came back from being down and won in overtime. It was a really good game. I think that's it. I didn't watch the Capitals Devils game, but that looked exciting.
Yeah.
6-5 in overtime. And then we got a couple live right now. The Flames are out to a 1-0 lead to remain undefeated. Knock on wood. But I'm pretty sure both of us predicted them at the bottom of the division, so we look stupid right now. But I think most people have them in the bottom three.
Season,
so we all look dumb together.
Itself out. I have no worries.
Yeah. I do see with it starts to get crazy because it's like, oh, come on, it's the beginning of the season. Who cares? Avalanche, they're horrible. They're still going to be great. It's a long season. Okay, well, eventually you start to go.
At some point.
Okay, Predators are 0-5. Let's.
I mean, we're.
Well, you just think of who's a good example are they in the same division with the Predators? I guess the Stars. Everyone knows the Stars are amazing and they're probably going to win the division. They're, a top-heavy team. Not that they are top-heavy, but the Dallas are, really, really good team. And then you look at the Predators, who everyone thought was going to be pretty good on paper. Okay, well, if Dallas has won 4 or 5 games and you've lost 4 or 5 games,
that's
all right, we're already 20 points apart in standings. And once you hit game number 8, that's 10% of the year, right? So it seems like it just started last week, but it's also well, you can't lose 10% of your games right out of
and the Stars.
Gate. Now it's going to be really hard to finish in the top.
Today, 4-1. So.
Yeah, spank them because I was laughing because of fantasy. I didn't play Marchment. His team wins 4-1. He got no points, I think. But I got Draisaitl, got the only goal. The Red Wings win 5-2. I said, I'm going to play Raymond and bench Marchment. So I look and I see the Red Wings win 5-2. Let's go Wings. How many goals did Raymond get? No goals, no assists, no nothing. He didn't even play me in fantasy. Didn't even show up the score sheet. I'm like, but neither did Marchment. So I said, there's 9 goals between these two teams. I got nothing.
Tarasenko had a goal. He was on my bench.
You know how fantasy can get.
Tarasenko.
Who was on your bench?
But.
It's crazy that Tarasenko is kind of a bench player now, right? I mean, he's obviously got the pedigree and 2 Stanley Cups, and he's amazing. But 3-4 years ago, it was there's not many people that you would start over.
There was a time where he was probably a first or second round pick, and I know I grabbed him late this year, but I think he's turning into a better real life player than fantasy player. I mean, there was a point in time where he was, Did he ever score 50 goals in a year? He might have got close, at least 40.
I don't know if he broke 50. But I feel like he got 40.
So, I mean, he was always a threat. And, obviously the year the Blues won the Cup and stuff, he was probably up there leading at least leading the Blues in scoring. So, but yeah, now he's, I think he almost seems to do better in that role where he's not the main guy, He's got a little more freedom to play, not as much pressure.
Yeah.
And so then he just goes out there and can, handle it. So.
Yep. In fact, I'm just kind of looking a little bit on Yahoo, so it only gives me a couple years ago. But yeah, he dropped off in points, but I think as an overall role player in real life, did better. Obviously, they won the Cup in Florida, but he had 23 goals, 32 assists. Years before that, 18 goals, 32 assists.
And he was
I think in 22, he still played
and whatnot. So.
Yes, you were probably right. He only played 69 games.
So, if he's your third-line guy, that's a pretty deep... he still has the skill to put the puck in the net, so...
Right. He's hurt and gets 18 goals. Then he has kind of a role playing, or the Florida Panthers, he's on line 3, and he gets 23 goals. That's a good late round pick in fantasy. In fact, that's actually probably a pretty good segue. We're trying to do a shorter episode tonight for Nick. Nick's like a manager of a rink, if you haven't listened. And what did you close and then open or something back to back?
There was
So
a
you
hockey
no
game
sleep.
last night. Our Tier 2 junior team, the Springfield Junior Blues, had a game last night, and then I didn't stay for all of it, but I was there till maybe 8 o'clock last night. And then I turned around and I opened the building back up. I was there at 5 this morning, so quick little turnaround. Worked till about lunchtime, 1 o'clock today.
I was going to say, because I knew, right, when you were texting me, you were like, well, I open. I was like, you used to open pretty often, right? And I was like, don't you have to unlock the doors at like 4:30,
I would usually
5
get there
a.m.,
about
something like that?
4:45. We would unlock the building at 5. First skaters are on the ice at 5:45, so they're there half hour before. So usually by 5:15, there's people in the building. So
yeah, that, and I would assume, right? I mean, if they're on the ice at 5:45, then they're in the building 5:15, and that's usually figure skaters that early, right?
Yeah. I mean, hockey players usually get there about an hour before their game.
I feel like that's universal.
But everyone wants to get there to stretch and warm up.
Yeah, I don't know if
you get changed and all that stuff. So
yeah. And I grew up playing at that rink until I was 10 or 12 or something maybe, and then started playing where the Peoria Rivermen play when I was older. And the I don't know if it's universally true across all of North America, but it feels like the figure skaters are always early morning. So early, 5, 6 a.m.
I can see that.
I mean, they're probably easier to handle than hockey players, but it's kind of that dance mom vibe a little bit, and it's 5 a.m. dealing with that. It sounds not fun. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. That's your work, but I've just growing up playing hockey. I would always notice that it's
those people.
Oh, you know what it was? I think it's called the Owen. Yeah, right. I can't remember what it's called now. I think it's called the Owen Center or something. It's not where the AHL Rivermen play. It's the youth hockey Rivermen play in Peoria. I don't know if they changed the name of the building, but they definitely had Rink 1 and Rink 2, and they had names.
Okay.
I don't know why, but whatever.
Yeah.
That were named after people. They renamed one of the rinks after a figure skater. And a bunch of the hockey dudes were really upset or being kind of not I mean, they were kind of being a little judgmental, it was sort of we're not figure skaters, we're hockey boys, because it was a male figure skater. Well, I don't remember. I should have done. I didn't do any research. I just remember this. This guy went to the Olympics from that rink, from that town, and won a medal. I think he won a bronze medal in the Olympics. And they were like, we're hockey people. We don't care about... I'm like, dude, he's an Olympian.
That is pretty crazy.
Are you kidding? What have you done in your life? And we're high schoolers that they were real hard. They didn't want to be named after a figure skater. I'm like, dude, that guy is so much better than you will ever be.
We have a lot of hockey players that take skating lessons from figure skaters at the rink. And if you ask hockey players,
and you know what, they
honest, they will tell you that figure skaters that's who you should go to learn to skate.
Yeah, I mean, at least it's a good idea to learn how powerful they can be on their edges when they do their pirouettes, and they do I can't remember what it's called, but they turn forward, backward real quick, and they kind of build up speed to do a jump, and they don't chug like a hockey player. It's all edge work. They have to just generate speed on their edges only, and it's very hard to do. And I've said for a long time that anyone who's honest with themselves, figure skaters are way better skaters than most hockey players. It's kind of like you hear guys in the NFL will take ballet. It's you have to develop a strength that's specific to the edges of your skates. And there's a lot of balance. There's a lot of ankle strength. And if you're out there, that's where the term bender comes from, right? You're a bender in hockey because your skates are out like this because you don't know how to skate right. So it's like, okay, if you're out there taping them up like an idiot instead of going and getting your edge strength up. People say it about Datsuk. That's why Datsuk was so he's a small person, but you couldn't knock him off the puck. They said he was so strong on skates. I don't care how big you are, you're not moving him. And so, anyways, we're a family-friendly podcast here, or try to be, unless I slip up. But all the young kids out there that like hockey, if you want to work on your edge work, take a couple figure skating classes.
I definitely think it's beneficial to hockey players.
Definitely. So. Mm-hmm. In fact, there's somebody who's famous. I can't think of her name, but there's another podcast very famous. Not.
I don't know.
Is that
Tanya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan.
Okay, maybe not quite that famous, but no, she does. She does power skating with like NHL people, and so it's not actually figure skating, but she's like this power skating coach that's like famous. Not as famous as Tanya Harding, but
famous for a different reason.
Famous. Okay, let's probably for a better reason. Poor Tanya. I won't. Okay, that's a complex story, isn't it? Okay. Utah tied it up with the Bruins 1-1, and the real score as we're recording. Let's get into some hockey fantasy. I'm going to let you run with the line here. I've been talking a lot about nonsense. You got any studs and scrubs for us?
I got a couple of studs, and I just kind of want to take a minute to just kind of talk about it's more than just points, especially if you're just looking up for guys that you might pick up for a week or two or something. In our league, we have 5 ads that you can use for the week. A lot of times it's injury related that you would be using these ads. It's not necessarily, or a goalie, or just picking up, kind of getting a spot start out of a goalie. So a lot of these guys are kind of picking them up, dropping them. They're just on the bubble. If they're going to get hot, you might keep them for a couple weeks, but they're droppable. But there's a couple that I have here. And my first one is the other day I was looking, and it's the guy from Columbus who I believe scored today as well. And it is, I'll butcher his name, I'm sure, Yegor. I would say Igor, but that's with an I. This is Yegor Chinakov. Not sure how exactly to say that. Not trying to butcher it on purpose. But he, he has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games this year. He's got a point in every game that he's played in. He's got 3 goals, 2 assists. 3 goals, 4 assists. In those games, like I said, scored again today, even though they lost. But he's getting some shots on goal. He's getting some decent playing time. And I think he's on the top line, getting some power play time. He's only rostered in 18% of Yahoo leagues, and he's a winger. So he's a guy that, like, I wouldn't necessarily drop, someone on my team that, I have Forsberg and Stamkos on my team. They haven't been produced and haven't been doing great. I'm not going to drop Forsberg to pick up this dude. But if I had an open spot or someone that was banged up, went on day-to-day or IR or something, and I had a free ad, he'd be someone I would be looking to just because he's got the opportunity. He's getting the playing time, the power play time, and he's been producing. Right now he's ranked 19th in our league, and he's on nobody's roster. So I definitely think there's some value there. But again, he's one of those guys, you pick him up, keep dropping him. At some point, he's going to either just fall off and you're just going to drop him and no one's going to pick him up. Or, if he plays like this for another week, someone's going to pick him up and keep him on their team. So, but.
Yep. And if they stay hot, then you've totally missed out, right?
Yeah.
That's a good one. I didn't realize ranked 19 and not on anyone's list. I'm tempted to go grab him. I use my ads this week.
In today's game, for example, he had 5.5 fantasy points, a goal, 4 shots on goal, and a block. So, he is producing. Someone to keep an eye on.
Yeah. And if you play categories, it sounds like he's producing and shooting
Yeah.
a lot. So
Yeah.
right there, you got three good stats. And then the way we play is how we're going to talk. Um, he's ranked 19
Yeah.
overall. That's
Now,
pretty
the only
awesome.
thing.
Because there's some people that are underperforming. Maybe we'll circle back to that. I don't know who you have on your scrub
Hmm.
list, but we were talking before we push play. You've got a couple people on your team that are total studs in real life,
Yeah,
and they are
they
fantasy
are. Let
crap
me
right
just say
now.
one more thing about Chinikov as a stud. So, one thing to keep an eye on
Konechov,
Chinikov.
I think, by the way.
Okay,
I think so.
I'll go with
I
it.
feel like I
I've heard it
heard
both
them
ways.
say it.
I don't know.
32 thoughts. I feel like Elliot Friedman is
Yeah,
better
sure.
than I am.
So the one thing I would keep an eye on though is if you're just looking to pick up a guy to like kind of plug and play. So that we're recording on Friday or Saturday here, and if this comes out on Monday, the Columbus Blue Jackets only have 2 games next week. Something to keep an eye on. The week after that, they have 4 games.
That's a really good
You're
point.
going to pick him up, and he's going to play 2 games, so you're going to have a spot. He's going to be taking up a roster spot, but So I would look at when his games are, and I would look at who else I have on my team, and if I have other players that I'm going to play the night that he has a game, then I don't know that I would pick him up. I would pick someone else up that played on an off night for most of my other team. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, that's actually a really good point, and that's part of the reason I think you do really well in fantasy is looking at the forecast. Part of the reason I dropped the ball is just the other day I picked up somebody that I guess I could put on my stud list because I didn't put him, and he is a stud. Is who did I add? Antoine Lindell
Yeah.
or
Florida.
Lundell from Florida because he's killing it recently, and of course I picked him up and he didn't do too much, but like I had just missed the window. I'm not a huge fan of having the streaky players on my team. I feel like Pierre-Luc Dubois, Anthony Mantha, and Patrick Laine over the past few years have always had these up and downs. Obviously, Laine is out, but I picked up Mantha because the Flames were doing so well, and it immediately goes cold and gets me no points. So I picked up Lundell because my strategy was, like you said initially, is if you get a guy like Chinikov, then if you miss the opportunity and he stays hot the whole year, then you're like kicking yourself you had him. So when I got Lundell, I said, okay, he's ranked, I think, 30th in the league right now, which I thought was abnormally high. But with 4 goals, I figured I better get him because someone else is going to get him. And I had somebody go day to day on my list. Shaflovsky went day to day. So right. I said, I got a free ad. I throw him on IR plus immediately. We talked about this last episode. In our league, we have 2 IR plus, so they don't have to be an injured reserve in real life. They just can't play today. So I throw them on there because I knew sometimes you get lucky. You just leave them there. I throw him on that, and if they're not playing, I don't have to take him off. So I go get Lundell, and guess what? I had all my centers and all my wingers playing that night. So I just picked him up, and I either don't play him or I got to bench someone else. So that's smart, Stu. And like you're saying, if you want to pick up Chinikov, just think they're only going to play twice next week. So maybe you don't get him now. But like I was saying, if you do have a guy on IR, you might get a free ad. Maybe you should grab him and bury him. And then next week, hopefully he's still hot and you kind of got the low buy, So those are those good strategies in fantasy that kind of like, that could be the difference between like winning this week and winning next week. And once it's playoffs and a lot of the leagues play for money, right? So if you got a couple bucks on the line, you might go, I'm not picking that dude up because they only have 2 games next week. And that's the difference between
especially if there's someone else out there that has 4 games. Now you're talking someone that has twice as many games as a player that is doing well, but he just isn't going to have the games. So just those little things can make a difference in your fantasy. But yeah, so you were talking about my team here. I will say, scrub wise, the Preds are they're better than what their record shows. But yeah, I do have Stamkos and Forsberg on my team. And off the top of your head, how many fantasy points do you think Steven Stamkos has through 5 games?
Okay, all 5, including tonight. He scored today against the Red Wings. I think in 5 games he has
He might
7
have
points.
more. I'm just seeing what Yahoo has here. He's got 3 fan points in in the Yahoo league that we have. So what are they? 5? They're 0-5.
You get 3 for scoring, do you not?
Okay, that's 3. Sorry. Let me correct this. 3, and then he scored today. He got 4.5 fantasy points today, so he's up to 7.5 fantasy points through 5 games. So you were right.
Guess was amazing.
Sorry, I did not. They don't have it added up yet for the game. So he is currently ranked 545th in our league, and I drafted him in the first round. So yeah. Now, obviously, over the course of the season, I think it's going to even out and he'll be fine. But right now, through 2 weeks, I lost last week and I'm in a dogfight this week. So, I mean, I could be 0-2 and, that's not a lot, but it's like, man, I got to take the wins where I can get them. And Stamkos is not helping me so far. Forsberg, another one. He only has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's got 5 points in real life, and he's got let's see if we don't add up those points, they add those today, a little quick math, he's got about 22 23 fantasy points for me, but he was my keeper, and he's ranked 140th on the season in Yahoo. So I need the Predators to kind of figure it out and get kind of clicking a little bit because they've been playing like scrubs. And, of course, I'm plugging them in my line. I'm playing them because it's Stamkos and Forsberg. I'm not going to bench these guys and then look like an idiot when they go out there and Stamkos has a hat trick and Forsberg's got all the assists and another goal himself. So I just keep rolling them out there, and I'm just hoping they figure it out. Stamkos on a new team. Forsberg's got a new teammate, so these guys in real life, I'm sure, are just learning each other and trying to adjust and different things. They have the talent to be good. It's just trying to figure out the chemistry on the team right now. So I'm not too worried, but it is kind of like, all right, come on, guys, I need you to figure it out a little sooner than what you're doing.
It needs to pick up. Right. Something changed. Stamkos in the locker room. Maybe Forsberg's putting on his skates at 7:09 instead of 7:07. Have you seen that yet?
Not,
the Amazon?
But I do know that.
That's what he says. I tie my skates at 7:07 every single game.
That's crazy.
And whatever, his alarm goes off at 8:04 or whatever it is, and it's like, his whole life is like it's programmed out by he wrote a Python code, and the robot wakes up and goes to the rink and puts on his skates, and it was like the best year of his career. But something's off. Somebody's messed with his clock. The voodoo's off. He's a new dad. Maybe he's not sleeping. True.
Schedule's out the window. Routine is.
Well, people forget that. Sometimes you forget stuff like that. They're still people. They're not 19, 20 anymore. Maybe Stamkos' kids are going to a different school. They don't like it. There's weird stuff that can affect your game. Well, what was the thing last year? I don't know if it's true, but people were talking about Ovechkin's stick. That they stopped making the stick, and they said, we're going to keep making it for Sidney Crosby. That's it. The whole world. Ovechkin, McKinnon, McDavid, they don't give a crap. They do Crosby only. We're done. And that's a rumor I heard. And Ovechkin went through 25 sticks in 12 games. and 10 sticks every practice, like couldn't find a stick he liked. And there's some company that can't like do the advertisement, so it's just like a solid color. And they said, send us your old sticks. We're just going to duplicate it exactly.
That's crazy.
And after the All-Star break, when he went crazy and he scored all those goals, supposedly he got his stick back, made by a different company. And I'm curious how true that is, but it's weird how these guys are so good, and then like one little thing changes.
Yeah.
Like, what if Crosby signed for $9 million instead of 8.7? I mean, I think his whole world would collapse. That speaking of Ovechkin and Crosby, maybe we should pivot here a little bit. We didn't really do a full studs and scrubs, but I'll throw out one of mine. Is well, not this guy, I guess, because he's killing it now. But I was panicking early.
Yeah.
Like, you have now been 5 games without Stamkos. The first 2 games, I had Zibanejad with negative points. Okay, well, now he's got 1 goal and 4 assists through 5 games. So I'm like, okay, well, now we're talking. That's what we need. Couple scrubs real quick, and then we should talk about those milestones because we're already at our 30 mark. I got a couple scrubs and studs that are just the goalies because we already talked about it last week with Forgiev, they like to call him, is still playing terrible. And they did get the monkey off their back. The Avs won, but a stud on my list is Dostal
Anaheim,
for the Ducks. He had like 50 saves. They were getting outshot 40-11 at one point, and the score was tied 2-2. I said, woof. And then they ended up going into overtime, and like it sucks because McKinnon had a great move, and Dostal kind of saved it, and then it like rolled behind him and went in. He like almost saved it, and it kind of sucked for him because he played so well and they didn't win. But it's like, dude, the Avs look so bad. They got to do something with their goalie. And on that note, I heard Elliot Friedman say on his podcast that Scott Wedgwood, is a goalie that's out there that makes logical sense in the real world for like who's a good goalie that is serviceable, he's decent, that the Avalanche could realistically get, right? They're not going to trade for Shesterkin in real life, right? I mean, maybe. But what are you going to do? McKinnon for Shesterkin? Come on. And so a realistic trade is that they could probably get Wedgwood somewhat easily. So in terms of fantasy, keep your eye out for goalies that could go to the Colorado Avalanche. Because there's some people out there, maybe even like a Husso got sent down, right? Ville Husso's hurt, and he's having a hard time with the Red Wings. Like, dude, the Avs are totally desperate for a goalie. They got to figure something out. And just kind of poke around in fantasy, listen to the news channels and things. And, like, if a goalie gets sent to the Avs and plays decent, he's going to stack up wins. So just kind of, I would keep your eye out if you're looking for someone. Because along that same note, the scrubs I wrote down were Georgiev, Stu Skinner, and UC Saros. How is UC Saros, like, in my opinion, top 5 goalie in the NHL? He's underrated. He should always be in the Vezina conversation.
Yeah.
Can't make a save. Skinner, I think, has always been a little bit of a question mark. But last year he did so well in the playoffs, you're thinking, dude, you're crazy. Edmonton's going to win, 60 games.
Yeah.
Apparently not.
If they score 8 goals a game, they will. But you have to have a goalie that's going to steal you a couple games or at least give you a chance without you scoring 8 goals.
Something,
I've always thought that these teams like the Avs, like the Oilers, the Maple Leafs, go get you an elite goalie and win a couple of cups. I mean, and I know it sounds simple, and it's probably harder than what I'm making it out to be, obviously, or else they would just go do it. But it's like, I mean, if you're the Oilers and you have a chance to get, a good goalie, one that's proven, why wouldn't you jump at that? Yeah. Why wouldn't you make it work? And I think they have some cap numbers that might make it a little hard for them, the Oilers. But I mean, if that's your piece
Yeah,
that you're
for
missing,
sure.
you know you can score 6 goals a game. Go get a goalie.
You know you can score. You know what's a really good example of it is when the Panthers won the
Mm-hmm.
President's Trophy, right? And they lost in round one. They had the highest scoring offense in the league. They had the most like coming from behind. They had the most 5 goal games. They had all these scoring
Yeah.
records, and they were amazing. Then everyone started comparing them to, oh, remember when the Lightning lost to the Blue Jackets, and now the Panthers have done it. Both of them very strange. Living in here in Florida, you hear it. Lightning are like the best team ever. They lose in round one. Then they go to the final and they win 2 in a row, and then they go to the final and lose. Well, then like the Panthers almost mimic it, where they are the best team in hockey. They lose in round one. Then they go to the final and lose, and then they go to the final and win. Well, this year they could go to the final and win again. They're like a opposite of the Lightning. Well, what did they do? I don't remember all the players, but they had this high flying offense, and they said, we're going to trade these guys away,
Mm-hmm.
the Huberdeau trade, get in Kachuk. They moved all these players around, and it was like, what are you doing? You just won the President's Trophy. Bill Zito looks like he's panicking, and what are you thinking? Oh, this is a panic button. The Panthers are going to be terrible. Well, he knew what it took. They needed more depth, they needed solid defense, and they needed a goalie. And they paid, I think the number one paid goalie in the NHL is Bobrovsky.
Yeah.
And guess what?
It was worth
They
it.
go win the Stanley Cup. Like, well, not to pick on Toronto, but it hasn't been 1 year. It's been like 6 years. You have Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, and of course Riley. But like, you have 4 forwards taking up all the money. You only need Matthews. Matthews scored 70 goals. You don't need any more goals. Nylander is amazing in the playoffs. You need a playoff guy. Look at Fedorov. You need a playoff guy. You don't need all of them. I mean, do you think that you could trade Marner? I mean, could you do Marner for Shesterkin 1-for-1?
Get a solid return. Yeah.
I mean, if the Leafs have Shesterkin, they win the cup. Are you kidding me? We're going to score 11 goals, and we've got the best goalie in the world.
I mean, the Leafs are going out.
And the same thing.
Matt Murray, Ilya Samsonov. I think they even went and got Jack Campbell after like his one flash in the pan good year or whatever. But it was like just.
And they did it to Edmonton also.
It was just like, go get you a proven goalie. Dude, it's aggravating. I mean, it's fine because I'm a Wings fan, so whatever. But it's like that's your glaring weakness. And if I know that my team is good enough to win the cup, if I can get a serviceable goalie in there, that's what I'm going to go get. I'll mortgage the future, win a cup or two, and just go do it, because you don't know what people's windows are going to be. You're going to get all this frustration. Is Matthews going to be happy there? When's he going to win out? When's Connor McDavid going to want to get out of there because you don't get him a goalie, you don't get him help, and maybe Stuart Skinner can get over the hump. But if you have a chance, if you have the opportunity to go get someone now to win now, then I think you got to jump on it. You can't just be rebuilding all the time. I mean, I'm saying that as a Wings fan who we're rebuilding, but we're not a goaltender away from the Stanley Cup. I would argue that the Leafs and Edmonton are.
Yes, and they're both a good example because, we're not reinventing the wheel here. Everyone knows this, but that's what's crazy. Everyone who follows hockey more than like tuning into the score in March or June is like, the Oilers have had goalie trouble for 5 years, and the Leafs have had goalie trouble for 5 years. And they're both in the top 5 teams in the NHL. Go get a goalie. And look at the track record. Edmonton said, we're good. Stu Skinner's our guy. Okay, well, they're 1 goal away from the Stanley Cup. So, yeah, maybe. Year before that, who was it? Jack Campbell's our guy. Don't worry about it. Year before that, Mike Smith, our guy. Don't worry about it. I can't even remember who was before that. But, I mean, they've had a track record of, like, there's a problem with net. Yeah. And they're like, no, there's not. Trust me.
Cam Talbot
it's Matt
was there for a minute.
Is the Leafs. We got Samsonov now, baby. Cup's already ours. Okay, Samsonov's pretty good. He's not Shesterkin. He's not Bobrovsky. He's not Jake Ottinger. He's not Demko. He's not Hellebuck. He's not regular season Hellebuck.
Right.
He's not Vasilevsky. Like they're in a different category.
What?
Go get somebody and win the cup. Like, what is wrong with you? Go get Jeremy Swayman. If I heard that Jeremy Swayman was having problems with Sweeney and we can't get a deal done, I'd go to the Boston Bruins and I'd say Mitch Marner, Swayman right now. No offense to Mitch Marner. I think he gets a lot of crap he doesn't deserve,
Right.
But like
you got plenty of scoring on your team.
When they got Swayman, you think they're going to lose to Boston in Game 7? No, they're not. They're going to win in 4 games.
What was?
It's just crazy. I didn't mean to talk about goalies so much, but it's just so weird that those two teams are so good and they keep getting a decent goalie and saying
it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Which, I mean, sometimes it works, right? But not when you've had 5 or 6 years of failure and the issue is in net. Like, I hate to do it because we're Wings fans, but like when the Wings won a lot, it was different. There was no salary cap, right? And they just had the best players. But they had Chris Osgood in that a lot. They only had Hasek the one time or the 2 years. Like, look at the Blackhawks. Sorry, but Corey Crawford's not super good. Okay, well, he'll probably go to the Hall of Fame. He's got 3 Stanley Cups. He has a pretty good numbers record through his career. Like, they could win with a mediocre goalie. You can't. It's obvious that that's your problem. You tightened the Leafs especially. They tightened up their back in a little bit. They got people like Max Domi that are producing on the line 3. They've got a really, really good team. Okay, so now Justin Wool's the future? Maybe. I hope so. I don't know. Oh, Hildeby. Hildeby's way better than you think. He's the future. Yeah, okay, maybe he is. Go get somebody.
It's aggravating to watch, but I get it. There's a lot more to it than what we realize sitting here, but still.
Right.
I mean, what was...
Right. Because I'm the opposite when it comes to the Wings. I'm like, if you think you know more than Yzerman, you're an idiot. But it doesn't seem like they try, at least in the media. It seems like they're like, we're not looking for a goalie because Stuart Skinner's going to win us a Stanley Cup. And I'm like,
good luck with that.
Maybe. Good luck with that. And sometimes it works. You know, you get hot at the right time. Bennington, Aiden Hill. You know, it can happen. Who won for the Avs?
Darcy
he wasn't
Kuemper.
Super amazing, but he got the job done.
Yeah.
Kuemper. And I always said Kemper's underrated. He's an amazing goalie. Well, recently, doesn't seem that way. But he just had to play okay. The Avs are not as good as they were when they won. They are not as complete without Kadri and Landeskog and, you know, whoever else. It's like, moving away from that, though, we did plenty of studs and scrubs, and I derailed the conversation for 20 minutes. Did we want to talk some milestones this time instead of, like, we don't have our normal hockey history because we had some history kind of happen in front of us in real life this week.
I didn't really do any NHL history because there was a lot of history being made already. So the other night, I forget which night it was right now, but just this past week, Ovechkin got his 700th assist. So he's got 700 goals, 700 assists. And I want to say only there's like just a handful of players that have that because...
I feel like it was 6 maybe, 6 or 7. Anyways,
right.
I think not very many people.
8 players with more than 700 goals. So there might only be 5 or 6 that have.
Okay.
There might be 6 that have both. Because of the 8 players that have 700 goals, Mike Gardner, Brett Hall, and Ovechkin are the only ones that have more goals than assists. Usually it's flip-flops.
Oh, wow.
Right? Usually you got, goals, but then you have a bunch more assists. just because they're easier to come by because we got the primary and secondary assists. So 2 players can get an assist on 1 goal.
Yep.
But yeah, so Ovechkin, Brett Hall, and Mike Gardner have more goals than assists. So of the 8 players with more than 700 goals, I think there's only 6 that have 700 assists to go with the 700 goals. So, I mean, Ovechkin is just on a tear. It's crazy because I look at these the other um, players with some milestones this week were Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. Crosby scored his 1600th point.
Mm-hmm.
He's sitting on 593 goals, so he'll be at 600 here in a minute. Malkin, I think, scored his 500th goal, and he's got 800 plus assists. And what was the thing that they like? Crosby and Malkin both assisted on each other's.
Yeah. So I think yes, and I think you even had a better detail. It was when Crosby scored his 500th, Malkin assisted. And then this week,
Crosby
Malkin
assisted.
got his 500.
And they were the
Crosby
only
assisted.
ones that assisted on those goals, I believe. Yes. Yeah.
No second assist. Right. It was just the score sheets, just them. And then it's been a while since Crosby got it. So whatever, 2-3 years later.
Yeah.
Or more. I don't really remember when Crosby broke it, but they flipped it. Yeah, that is pretty
crazy. So, I mean, just this generation, when I look at the list of names on there as far as like most points in the NHL and most goals and stuff like that, there are, I mean, we're in a golden age, you know, right? We grew up in the 90s watching Yzerman, Lemieux, Sakic. All those guys are top 10 goals. Yager. I saw the tail end of Gretzky. You know, Messier was still around. Ron Francis, obviously past their prime. But, you know, just a cluster of guys right there at the top that all played in the same era. And that's kind of happening again. Ovechkin, Crosby, Malkin, all those guys playing at the same time. I mean,
yep.
It's I think sometimes we just take it for granted how good these guys are. I think on one of the earlier podcasts, I was talking about Crosby. If he scores 100 points in the next, you know, each of the next seasons and gets 200 points here in the next 2 years, he'll have over 1,800 points. And there's only like 3, you know, Gretzky, Yager. I mean, he would be top 5 all time NHL history points, which is crazy to think about. And I mean, I was not a fan of his early on in his career, but if you look at the numbers, and I hate playing the what if game, but you know, you also kind of have to think, all right, well, what happens if Crosby stays healthy? What happens if there's no lockouts? Ovechkin's already would have.
Yeah. 2 seasons.
Ovechkin would have already broken Gretzky's record, and he'd be knocking on the door of 1,000 career goals. So, I mean, you can play that game all day if you want. But the fact remains that these guys are some of the best to ever lace them up. Malkin, you know, I don't know where he ends up. You know, I think he's the 38th player to get 500 goals. So he's got 1,400 points. 1,300 points. But, you know, he could end his career with 1,500 points. 3 cups, a Conn Smythe, an MVP award. I mean, so he's no slouch himself. Just kind of playing in the shadow of Crosby. But, you know, he's one of the – he might be one of the best Russian players to ever play.
Right, yeah, that's a good call. And you know what? Somebody made a good point the other day when Malkin got his milestone. They were talking about, you know, he kind of lives in Crosby's shadow a little bit and all that type of stuff. A little, you know, Yager Lemieux sort of, but Yager played so long that he kind of eclipsed it. But, like, sometimes you look at that and you're thinking, like, okay, maybe he's not quite in the same echelon as, like, 20, 30 years from now when we look back. Crosby will be in the convo of the tops. The Gordie Howe, the Bobby Orr types. Like, Crosby's there. And then when you're talking goals, it's like Ovechkin is probably going to break Gretzky's record, which is insane. I know that Gretzky almost has 2,000 assists, but it's like, I forgot that you already predicted the exact time of the. Do you want to say how many minutes into the game already?
Okay, I will say it's probably going to be towards the end. It'll be an empty net. There'll be this whole weird thing about, oh, that's lame. I would love it if it's classic Ovechkin power play in his office, just one times it passed. Yeah,
One timer. This is Nick's personality. To get into the, if you want to become our friend and listen to the pod a lot, Nick has already in his mind developed the hatred for when Ovechkin breaks the record on the empty net, and all these people come along and say he's not even a good goal scorer. He did it on an empty net.
This past year when he was chasing Gordie Howe, like, oh, it was a lot.
He did have a few.
It's like, and he didn't even want. If you go back and look at the tape and some of those interviews when he broke Gordie Howe's record in DC, they were passing him the puck. It was an empty net goal from like the blue line, center ice or whatever. Like, he didn't want to do it, but he was like, all right, I guess I have to just to get it over with. You know, it was like,
yeah. You know, he doesn't want that. Also, just another record because he's got so many. You know who has the most empty net goals of all time? The same guy who's got the most goals. Wayne Gretzky has the most empty net goals.
Yeah, so we'll see.
So it's like, if you score the most goals total, you probably have the most empty net goals total also because you score the most goals. But so those are all amazing players. Like you said, Russian-born players. You probably do have Ovechkin, Malkin, Fedorov. It looks like there's going to be 2 or 3 goalies that'll be in the conversation, or 4 or 5. That's another thing in our generation now. Maybe not our generation, but who's playing right now is like all the best goalies are Russian right now. They always used to be Canadian, specifically French Canadian, right? You had Brodeur and we had Waugh. Everyone was Canadian who was the goalies. All the way back to Ken Dryden. There's a few, of course, Hasek and Tretiak played with the Soviet Union, but it used to be Canadians. Now, we're going to get some bold predictions later going into the 4 nations. I truly think that the USA is the best team start to finish, should be the gold medal favorites, even though you sound like a crazy person saying, dude, McDavid and McKinnon are on the same line.
Yeah, it's pretty wild when you look at it.
It's over. We won. But it's also like, who's in net? Like, I mean, Aiden Hill maybe, I think it's Canadian.
I think I saw the projected line, and the goalies were Aiden Hill, Jordan Bennington, and Sam Montebault or whatever for the Canadians right now. Who's been playing great. But
Miles, our other co-host, looks like a genius because he drafted Cam Talbot and Monty, and I said, what are you doing? I don't think Cam Talbot's even the starter. Then all of a sudden, Husso's on waivers, and Cam Talbot gets a 50-save shutout or whatever, and Monty's the best goalie in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Soros is on the bench. Like, I don't know what is going on. So Miles looks like a genius. Some of his drafts that I thought were a little silly are panning out pretty good.
Agreed.
On that topic, Monty and his teammate last year, Jake Allen, had an interesting milestone. I'm going to word it wrong because we had a little debate about that before we pushed play. Jake Allen became the first goalie in history that had registered a win with 33 different franchises?
He has beaten 33 other franchises, I believe, yes.
And so the confusion or asterisk on that comes with Utah Hockey Club and Arizona Coyotes and how that breaks down. So I guess apparently he's the only person that has had a win against Utah and also had a win against the Coyotes. Well, of course, every team. But I assume that there's a few goalies that have won against every team. I would guess Jonathan Quick and Fleury.
Maybe Luongo.
And, maybe Vasilevsky. There's probably a couple that Luongo probably did it when he was active. Price when he was active. Lundqvist when he was active. most likely beat every team in the league once. Although, you know what? Actually, is a good point. Lundqvist won it.
Price probably
because
wouldn't.
he never
Right.
beat
Vasilevsky
Rangers.
wouldn't.
Yeah, right. So that's a caveat with it. I wasn't even thinking. So probably Fleury, probably Luongo, and whatever. There's a few, but Allen became the first person to do it with 33 because of the Utah thing. So
cool.
kind of interesting how they're a new it'll be a piece of trivia forever, right? Like, who is the goalie who, unless of course someone else does it, which I assume Jonathan Quick probably could.
Yeah, and I would assume
I'm curious if he's won against and Fleury could probably. Those are the only two I can think of off the top of my head that could probably do it.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was a cool little milestone. So we had Ovechkin, Crosby, Malkin, and Jake Allen all kind of do some NHL history right before our eyes. No offense to Jake Allen, that's a weird little bit of trivia. The other three are like huge monumental milestones. Everyone's a first ballot Hall of Famer with those guys. And as much as I don't want to say it, someone actually laughed at me on Instagram the other day. I said, "Is Crosby good enough to be on the Mount Rushmore of hockey yet?" And people were like, "Oof, this is like not even a question or whatever." I don't know. I'm getting old, but these guys must have been just straight up old heads saying like Crosby is not that good. I'm like, you might want to review his resume because he is that good. I don't know if I'd put him on my Mount Rushmore of everyone because it gets a little weird when you have other positions. But we'll do an episode, like you said one time. We'll do kind of especially if Miles joins us, we'll have a 3-man little circle of kind of like, who's your top 4 goalies of all time? Your top 5, whatever, goalies.
That'll definitely have to be a topic for.
Because I don't know if I could do justice to
positions.
Yeah, we'll have to. Because I don't know if I could do a top 5 players very well. Because then it's like, you got some of the old timers like Gordie Howe, and then you're kind of like, okay, well, if you need a goalie in there, who are you going to take out? Lemieux, Gretzky, like there's some people that it's like,
we'll
who's
definitely
out?
Do a Mount Rushmore of goalies, Mount Rushmore of defensemen, and then I don't know if it'd just be forwards or centers and then wingers, or I don't know how we'll do it, but I mean, we'll
by nation too. Yeah. You just said Malkin is probably
we could even do that.
Because I bet you Malkin, off the top of my head, Malkin might be 3 or 2, not 2. I don't know. Russian-born player. There's some really good ones. Of course, I'm biased as a Red Wing with Datsuk, but Datsuk and Fedorov and Ovechkin and Malkin have got to be up there. Kucherov is already kind of making a case for himself.
So.
Interesting. We'll go into that. I don't know too much about the Soviet players. Way back in the day, there was that, Tretiak and those guys that maybe they were even better, but they didn't play in the league. It's hard to tell. But
yeah, we'll dive into it.
Okay, well, that's pretty cool there. We'll dive into it. You know what? One that we had, NHL history, we didn't really do today, but I just saw this post of a video of Bobby Orr's first game in the NHL. And it's a true story. I think it's his first game because they showed this video and he's playing the Detroit Red Wings. And it must have been an interview with Orr. I don't remember how I heard this story, but it's a true story that Bobby Orr met Gordie Howe, and he was this young prodigy, right? And Gordie Howe was joking around with him. And he said, when you get to the league, bud, or kid, watch out for my elbows when you come up to the NHL. So he's playing the game, and in this clip somebody posted on Instagram, at the very end, he catches an elbow. It's like the play's over, like the play's dead, and he gets a bow from Howe pretty good. Kind of got him in the shoulder and the head, just drops him. And, Bobby Orr's tough. He jumps right back up. But in the interview, Bobby Orr said that he gets elbowed in the head by Gordie Howe. And he's on the bench, and everyone's like, "Hey, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, kid. We'll get him for you, Bobby. We'll get him for you, Bobby." And he stops everyone. He's like, No. It's okay. He warned me. It was an interview with Bobby Orr, so he was like, and to this day he says Gordie Howe's the best player to ever live.
Yeah.
Over Lemieux and Gretzky, and that's probably him, kind of being a starstruck kid still, even in his 70s, but like, or however, he might be 80 now, but it was just so funny that he's like got elbowed in the head and was like, "We're good." He warned me. Fair's fair. He said he was going to elbow me in the head. No helmet. Anyway, so that'll be our NHL history. Was this week's Milestones plus a little bit of fun with Bobby Orr's video of his first game ever. And I think that about wraps it up. We could do I'll rapid fire one more because it's not an actual milestone. But with Crosby and Ovechkin, we got the Capitals and we got the Penguins. NHL posted the most ridiculous John Carlson stat.
Yeah.
Have you seen this today? So most people have probably seen it because it was like it's going viral everywhere. But 506 games at home, 506 games away, 263 assists at home, 263 assists on the road, 1,180 shots at home, 1,180 shots away.
But he's consistent.
Like, how did that even... like, first of all, how does someone notice that, right? Because even if you're doing stats all day long, if you look at that tomorrow, the stats are wrong.
Oh, for sure.
Like, it's...
You got to be keeping up with that, looking at it every day. I mean, it's...
Looking at it every day. Someone probably got pulled into the office by some micromanager, assistant manager. How long did it take you to come up with that stat? We want to be more efficient with our time. Okay, well, I got your 50,000 likes, so.
Wild.
Anyways, that's pretty much all I've got, I think. There's some good ads to get that Nick said that are out there. We have some people in our league that are doing some good ads I like. They're dropping people and getting some good choices. You had a good one. You dropped Michkov and picked up Teravainen. And then whoever picked up Michkov, he had a good one too. Yeah. Can't remember who he dropped, but there's some guys in our leagues making some smart moves at the right time.
We got everyone paying attention this year, so it should be real competitive. I like it.
Yep, we'll see. Now the curse. I'm curious. We'll have a little fan write-in thing or whatever. We're getting an email set up because we want to do a segment that involves the fans. And one thing I'd like to ask is that type of stuff, right? Do people pay attention? And what we've noticed is a problem. We'll see once football's over how much they're paying attention because everyone's on their app for football. And are they paying attention after the NFL is done with the regular season? We'll see. But it's been competitive this year, and I'm loving it. Maybe people are listening to our podcast. That's your job this week, Commissioner. I'm voting against all the trades until everyone in our league listens to the podcast. Okay, that's a good time to wrap it up. I'll just keep talking to myself because I don't know how to end things. I can't hang up the phone in real life either.
That's all right.
So
I think it was good.
This was a great pod, Nick. Yep. Great catching up with you.
It was a good time.
Good stuff, bud. All right, I will catch you next week. Everyone tune in. We are Studs and Scrubs on Spotify, Studs and Scrubs on YouTube, and the Studs and Scrubs podcast on Instagram has our link tree. Yep. So you can find everything that you need right from there.
Rate, review, do all the things.
All the things, all the downloads, all that helps us. When you get more eye traffic and you get more downloads, you can reach out for advertisement and stuff like that. But also, it's just fun for us, and hopefully that you guys get something out of it. And we want to get some fan interaction going here down the road. So we appreciate it, guys, and have a good week.
Keep
your stick on the ice.
Time.